Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the European Business Aviation Association, I would like to welcome you all to our second session in the Airops Webinar series. We're happy to see that, even though we can't meet up physically, the first session on the current market conditions last week was very successful. And the session for today also looks to be very engaging. That is what Airops Europe is all about. It's about offering the business aviation support community a platform to strengthen our competitiveness, learn from one another, use best practice, and be geared up to deliver best-in-class client and passenger experiences. To all those who are not members of the EBAA or those unfamiliar with the EBAA, we are a non-profit association based in Belgium that has existed for 41 years. We are the voice of the European business aviation sector and represent over 700 member companies, spanning the entire value chain of the business aviation sector in Europe. Our mission is to enable responsible, sustainable growth for business aviation, enhancing connectivity and creating opportunities. But remember, we can't do this alone. You are the people on the ground that encounter issues, and we are the ones who will try to help to alleviate these. The EBAA was able to help due to the member feedback. So thank you for your feedback and keep it coming, because you're the ones who are setting our agenda. As the business aviation sector is facing more challenges, but also more opportunities than ever, Airops hopes to bring you the latest operational information critical to your job function. We will be highlighting key priorities for the industry. So last week we discussed the state of play of business aviation by looking at the traffic and trends over the last year and what we were expecting going forward. Today we will discuss COVID-19, Brexit, but also the challenges ahead. Next week, on the 2nd of March, safety management systems in ground handling will be an excellent session and a must-attend session. And last but not least, on the 9th of March, with the support of Eurocontrol, we'll be discussing the tips and tricks on planning efficient and flexible flights. Before we start, the EBA would like to thank our sponsors for supporting the Airops webinar series. Thanks to their support, we're able to hold this year's series. This is Skylink Handling, UAS, and My Airops. Today, I would specifically like to thank our main sponsor of the day, Skylink. Skylink is a well-established company providing specialized services for executive aircraft at Larnaca and Paphos international airports. For operating for over 20 years, the company has continually expanded and has an exceptional high reputation and employing only experienced multilingual staff qualified to support all customers' executive and professional requirements. Without further ado, I would like to start our discussion. Post-pandemic and post-Brexit, a paradigm shift in aviation. 2021 will be a challenging year for business aviation. COVID-19 has left business aviation in a vulnerable state. On top of that, Brexit is creating additional burdens for operators, FBOs, and flight planners alike. Finally, the EASA ground handling legislation will also soon be published, requiring additional attention for the implementers. So I'm pleased that we have an excellent panel that are joining us and who will give their perspective on what's happening in the market. I will discuss the most important topics with them, but at the same time, I would like you to post all your questions for my panelists in the Q&A section. So preferably not in the chat, but in the Q&A section, where you also can put some likes by questions you would like me to put forward to the panelists. So let me start by introducing my panelists. Iryna Tissot is the Business Aviation Manager for the VINCI Airports Group. VINCI Airports develops, finances and builds and provides everyday operation at 45 airports throughout the world. Iryna started with VINCI in 2004 and she's currently the Regional Business Aviation Manager for Chambly, Grenoble, Toulon, Clermont-Ferrand and Lyon-Bron airports. She is also very active of the EBAA ACOG committee, which we very much appreciate. We're also very pleased to have on board today Francesco Gaetani, who has been the manager of the Air Operations Implementation section at EASA since 2015 and a member of the ICAO Flight Ops panel since 2017. Before joining EASA in 2014, he has worked 16 years as a pilot, safety officer, quality auditor, and regulation manager for a large commercial operator, holding type ratings on the famous MD-80 and also the Boeing 777. Francesco is the man who, with his team, is the one looking after almost all the main regulations that you deal with on one way or another, and we're very pleased to have him on the panel. The next person needs no introduction if you've been involved in ground handling, EBAA or ACOG in business aviation. Mark Peters represents his own company, RA Consulting, but most people will remember him for his many years at Jet Aviation as Director Quality, Health, Safety, Environment, and Aircraft Security, and where he was overseeing 2 MROs and 20 FBOs. Mark is an aviation accident expert investigator, safety officer, trainer, lead auditor, and combines more than 30 years experience between aircraft maintenance, quality, and health and safety. Last but definitely not least, we're also pleased to welcome Simon Shin. Simon started over 17 years ago as an air traffic controller in Eurocontrol before joining the NetJets team as an international flight planner. Simon has seen all sides of the ops center at NetJets, from technical communications in flight recovery, moving on to setting up the customer experience program. Simon is a certified Six Sigma black belt and has been leading the Lisbon Operations Control Center and building and leading the operations, regulatory and technical department. And making the link to Brexit there in 2020, Simon was the project lead for setting up the NetJets UK OC to mitigate impact to customers due to Brexit. So thank you all for joining. And with that, I would like to put up the first poll to start off the discussion. As we start our discussion today, I would like to start off with sensing what the situation is in the market and what is worrying you the most. So we created the following poll to see what for you the biggest worry is. So if you would be so kind to answer the poll, and following that, I actually will move straight to the panel. And the first question would be for Mark. What do you think is the biggest challenge you're facing today?
First of all, good day, everyone. And from my point of view, I will say answer B, uncertainty linked to a potential crisis economic for me is one point. And then implementation of measures related to COVID is the second one. If we look to the financial results recently published and all the action taken by the big industry players in reducing staff to adjust the level of the operation, we see also that the end of the subsidiary of financial support from the government are clear indicators that the COVID crisis will generate soon economical crisis in a short or mid-term. The 1 million euro question is, when will it happen? There is indicators like big player decision impacting all subcontractors, supply chain, impacting the local economy, and consequently impacting also the global economy. So these signals should be taken in account. COVID measure implementation, from what I know, I see, and are not especially roadblock. There are some constraints, but for some activities, of course. Somewhere, everyone bought these measures and implemented it. From my point of view, the biggest issue is more from individual country taking decision, lockdown, border closure, entry restriction, vaccination campaign, and each and everyone more or less playing for his own. And I don't see the end of the tunnel yet there.
Thank you, Mark. Francesco, we see the results here for the poll, by the way. So where the biggest one seems to be the link to a potential economical crisis. Okay, thank you for that. Francesco, For you, this is of course different. So what's the biggest challenge for EASA?
Yeah, hello, Robert, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, Robert, thanks for inviting me in the panel. We in EASA are happy to discuss important topics with our stakeholders, and the business aviation community is one of them for sure. Taking stock of the initial results, indeed, the financial impact is also seen as one of the major areas of concern, also from the regulator's perspective. Of course, the biggest challenge for us is to alleviate the impact of this financial crisis on the aviation system. So when the crisis started, we set up a task force to identify those activities that were necessary to support, mainly towards member states and industry, to allow a smooth return to service and a safe return to service after the peak of the crisis was over. Now we're talking about 1 year ago, and actually the outlook was not as grim as the one that we're facing today, where we have a sort of a stagnation. In terms of aviation safety, so the main focus areas were at that time competence of personnel and aircraft airworthiness. So we developed guidelines with the help of the NAAs and the industry. Also, there were some representatives from your community to provide the framework for handling the flexibility provisions that are allowed by our basic regulation and implementing rules. And in doing that, we had to take into account the degraded environment and indeed the financial impact contributed to this degradation. As I said, unfortunately, the effects of this crisis are still there, and the recovery was not as fast as we initially thought. So we are dealing now with two major risks, also together with our safety and strategy colleagues. The erosion of competence and the aircraft storage are keeping us busy, and we are dealing with those risks. And also we are adjusting our guidance where needed. But the main task now is to monitor the use of the flexibility provisions out there, mainly from the authority side, and the related risks, and considering the input coming from the industry as well. Through the advisory bodies, we have communities that the EASA uses to receive inputs, but also via the occurrence reporting system, which is a powerful tool that during this crisis has even more emphasis because it's an indicator of whether things are going well or not as well as we expected. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you. Simon, you obviously look at it from a different side as looking after a large operator. So what's the biggest challenge? So in the bigger picture, in line with the question before, what's the biggest challenge or worry for you as an operator?
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon to everybody. Most of what Francesco and Mark have shared already is also our concern, but we are also concerned on very more practical aspects of the coming future. Topics like ensuring currency and training up to speed in this current environment is challenging, especially when our training is sometimes done in the US. Yes, there have been derogations, but we need to make sure that when the flight volume does start to increase, we are ready to react accordingly. The other concerns we have is linked to airlines in the sense, will we have the network to be able to ferry our crews around? Those who know our business know that we also move a lot of crew members around within the European area, and will the airlines have the connections available? Or will the hotels be open to support our crew members? So these are very practical issues that we have concerned with, which only time will tell how it happened. And in the end, and once people get vaccinated, what will be required? Is a COVID passport? How will it be easier for crew members to travel versus general passengers, and how will that impact our business? That's our main focus. Back to you, Rob.
That's an interesting one, Simon. If you think about it, that the lack of airline connections generally is perceived as an opportunity for business aviation, because obviously we create connectivity and get people there. But I think not enough people realize it's a threat in itself as well, and especially if you have a flexible network as you do. So there's an interesting notion there. Iryna, so from your perspective as an airport, what's the biggest challenge that you are facing in the bigger picture?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Robert, for inviting me and putting the question. From the airport point of view, as we are welcoming passengers, the biggest challenge for us today is to know when the traffic will recover, and if the countries will have a common policy in terms of authorizations, lockdown, and everything. For us, that's the biggest challenge now, to know, like airports and views.
Okay. Well, that was the first round of a very general feel where you stand, but I would like to move to a poll of one of the favorite topics at the moment, for the last few months at least, something called Brexit. So again, we would like to see where you are as the audience. Have you or your company been impacted by the post-Brexit issues so far? With 3 answers. Yes, no, and what is this Brexit I keep hearing about? And with that, I would like actually to return to Simon, because how has Brexit turned out for you, Simon? Because you're a pan-European operator, so it must hurt you one way or the other.
Indeed, and the last option, has anyone heard about Brexit? That's almost comical. Yes, it has impacted our operation because the UK was an integrated part of our primary operating areas, and the main issue is basically to ensure that we have cabotage, i.e. doing internal flights in the UK, is no longer feasible having a European AOC. So we decided about 18 months ago that it was required to set up an AOC in the UK. It was over a year of investment. It's quite a challenge to do that. Notwithstanding, even having this AOC now from the UK CEA, we still don't have the same flexibility as we had in the past, because we have to now admit the UK is no longer part of the EU, and that has big impacts. Having a smaller fleet in the UK, it just doesn't, which is not as easily flexible, interchangeable with our European fleet, does create inefficiencies and has in the end an economical impact to the business. Although when setting up the UKSC, the requirements are very similar to EUAC, the UK CA does have its particularities and specific things like security training. They have a flight duty limitations of the CAP 371, also very different. And now we have 2 ACs to manage, and so we have to be very, very sensitive and ensure that both have equal treatment. Yeah, I think that puts it in a nutshell, very much focused.
Okay, just on that, have you already run into things that you had flights from the UK to, let's say, the US? Have you run into traffic right issues there, being an EU operator now? Or do you use your UK AOC and then sublease it? Or is there any practical advice there yet?
Well, currently the UK authorities actually a step ahead from the European authorities. They've created a program called block permits, which allows all EU operators to operate to and from the UK from Europe without having to request individual permits each flight, which is a big advantage, which some European states haven't got to that yet. But the seventh freedom, i.e. flying from the US to the UK, is still feasible via the foreign carrier permit. So again, the UK CEA have established these processes, which we or any other European operator can use to continue to operate to and from the UK to a certain degree. The biggest impact is indeed the internal cabotage flights.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm aware of a number of UK operators opening a AOC in Europe, and as far as I'm aware, you're one of the few who's done it the other way around. And it's we're definitely watching it. Brexit and all the issues around it is a big thing for us at the EBAA. and we try to help by publishing all the operational information on our website. So if you want to find out what the situation is, and this is particularly important for UK operators, go to our website and look up the link. But, and this echoes what we said earlier, if you run into issues on Brexit, some of them are practical, impractical things, send them to us, and at least we, even if we can't solve them, if we can put them on the radar of the relevant authorities, that would really help us and therefore yourselves. Now, with the whole thing about the flying, so we've got the certain freedoms now that we're allowed to do, but a lot of people forgot about the other side of Brexit. Mark, as an MRO and an FBO specialist, what do you see as the biggest issues with Brexit?
From my point of view, with the MRO side, we should not face a lot of problems. In fact, the EASA and the UKCA made a great work there. In leaving the EU, UK becomes a third country as per the EASA rules. As such first country, the regulation is already existing. So for the MRO, this regulation applies. So it means an EU operator will still be able to go to UK in his MRO like Bombardier or Gulfstream, at least, under the condition that the MRO hold a third country maintenance approval from the EASA. So there is also agreement and there is no restriction on the circulation of spare parts. So this is something which is quite important and does not, I would say, it's not a roadblock for maintenance, which is quite important. So there is agreement between UK and the 27 from the EU. So it's quite good. From, I would say, there is, from the MRO point of view, there is a clear understanding between the two regulators, UKCA and the EASA, and they made huge work there to ease this transition and facilitate the maintenance of the aircraft. From an FBO point of view, what I see, maybe custom and border control rules to be maybe somewhere, not a roadblock, but maybe some difficulties to put in place. These things have been discussed about customs and about the border control also. So I don't see really a big impact. I think the impact is more for the operator, as explained Simon just before.
Yeah, I think we're very pleased, and you refer to it, that the free circulation of spare parts, that is a big thing, specifically if you're AOG in the UK or vice versa. What about licensed engineers there, Mark? Is there, what happens with an EASA licensed engineer that used to be EASA licensed engineer based in the UK? Is there any clarity on that?
So there is clarity on that. It has been discussed also, and things has been put in place. So someone who is holding a UKCA license cannot work under the EASA 145 regulation. That's finished. There was a period of transition when people can convert their UK license into a European license. Okay. On the other side, I don't see a lot of people transferring their EASA license into a UK license. Okay, but things have been studied and put in place by the EASA and the UK, and it's working. And we had a lot, when I was in my previous company, we had a lot of people holding UK license, yeah. And under certain, I would say, circumstances, they have been able to transfer it into Swiss license, French license, other license. So it was really well studied and well managed also by the EASA on this side.
Thank you there. Iryna, for you as an airport, and specifically your airports are all based in mainland Europe, but within the group it's a bit wider. Any negative impacts from Brexit that you run into, or any things you can share there?
Well, for today we don't have enough time from the Brexit to see the real consequences on the airport operations. And and with the COVID crisis as well, it's difficult to say. Of course, as Mark said, maybe customs and border controls time. Now Great Britain will become a third country. Maybe in France, from the passenger tax point of view, because Great Britain will become a third country as well. But everything from at our airport, it was prepared. So we worked with the authorities because we had enough time to work with them to prepare the infrastructure, to prepare our tariff policy. So for now, we don't feel any impact, but we were prepared to.
No, but I think that's then probably in line with what we hear with a lot of people. I think it's particularly UK-based operators and also UK businesses which are hurt by this, and that's unfortunate. There is a joke I heard while I was in Cologne by people saying, well, you know, the Brits were instrumental in bringing all the rules to EASA and now they've left. But that means there's also a follow-up question for that. Francesco, how has your organizations, and like I said, has been set up with a large contingent from the UK CAA, and how have you been able to deal with and how have you been affected by Brexit?
Thank you, Robert. It's a tough question, especially on the first part. And first of all, I would like to say that EASA lost a reliable, experienced partner and a contributor of the regulators team. So here we will have an impact in the short term to ensure that the capacity and our ability continues, you know, similarly with no interruption, let's say. And we have been prepared for that. We have been in contact with the Commission and the other member states to also ensure our capability in terms of process implementation. We used a lot of experts also for our tasks that relied on the UK CAA. So having said that, basically what we did is once we knew that Brexit would actually happen, then we set up a cross-domain internal team. We had our legal department to lead it, and we addressed all the Brexit matters in one go. And as Mark said, we did a lot of we made a lot of arrangements to ensure the mutual recognition of certificates, especially in the maintenance and production. Of course, due to the uncertainty of the negotiations, the team had to develop different scenarios. You know, when we started this, we didn't know that actually it was this Brexit the way it happened at the very last minute. So we identify scenarios and possible solutions, and we need to also realize that we had to face consequences of political decisions taken elsewhere in Brussels, and that we had to ensure the minimum impact on the EU industry in the transition period. And as Mark pointed out, that was actually the case. And in the months in the transition periods after 31st of December 2020, okay. The focus was again on the recognition of certificates, and then to facilitate the transitions, we also developed an FAQ, frequently asked question page in the EASA website, and I believe, Robert, that you will provide the links to this after the meeting. And basically, we established the subject matter focal points that addressed all the different questions that we either received or we imagined that they were actually going to be asked. And in addition to support the transition for the EU industry, EASA also work on assessing the applications from the UK undertakings for third country approvals or authorizations. For instance, my department where I work is dealing with the third country operators from the UK. Now we received a lot of applications before the deadline, and we had to process those as a matter of priority to ensure that these operators could continue to fly in our market, provided that the Brexit agreement allowed it. And also, as a side note, we had to change the status of UK in the EU ramp inspection program, because they were one of the member states, and now they are becoming one of the 50 participating states where we have Australia, Canada, and also now UK is a third country, let's say, in this program. Back to you.
Well, thank you, Francesco, and I think you summed it up nicely by saying, or not nicely actually, in the sense that you know, the EASA lost a reliable partner, and I think both sides are not better off by being apart, because I think it was a very close-knit family, and there's a lot of good came together. You mentioned where the links we refer to for the frequent asked questions. On the EASA the EBAA website, there's a page on Brexit, and besides the information from ourselves, we have the EASA link in there because it's an excellent link and it has the best question, the most of the questions answered. Also, the UKCA page is on there as well, the link to the UKCA page, which is another great source of information. So make sure, and I just saw in the chat that my colleague Justine put the link as well. And also, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A, please. And I already have a question for Simon, because from your perspective, what's the biggest outstanding issue regarding Brexit, Simon?
I think we touched upon it earlier on about the traffic rights. Mm-hmm. So the agreement between the Brexit deal allowed third and fourth freedoms, so to and from London and any city or any place in Europe and back and forth, for both UK and EU operators. But it's moving forward, as I mentioned, the UKCA has set up this block permit, the foreign carrying permit. We're not seeing the same sort of traction on the European states. And we have concerns that the UK have always said that they'll do whatever is given to them back and forth, you know. And we do have some concerns if how the European states are going to catch up in that sense. And if they don't, what will be the reaction from the UKCA on that topic? So it's still all to do with traffic rights mainly. Yeah,
it's an issue close to our heart. We have people in our European affairs team who are also dealing with it. And the one main issue we have is that we have 27 European states who all some of them were as unprepared as you know, not very prepared at all. And what we see there is that everybody was looking at one another of A, what are the other states doing? B, what's our competence? Because some member states, some fairly big member states actually thought it was a competence of Europe to do that negotiation, only to find out that they're still sovereign states, so they need to do it. So we completely echo what you're saying, and we're tracking and looking at what's happening. And our main aim in that process is we want the least red tape and the highest flexibility as possible. At the same time, we need to appreciate it's a very political discussion. So I think you're absolutely spot on. That is the biggest outstanding issue going forward on Brexit. We call the session Brexit, COVID, and everything else. So let's move on. And I would like to share a slide on COVID traffic. If you were in the session last week, you will have seen hundreds of slides, all different ways of looking at things. But I think this one is for us the most telling one. If we look at the blue one, which is the top one, is 2019, and then we see 220, way below. From March until July, or far below, but actually August, we almost had the same amount of traffic. Now, put it in perspective, it is the same amount of traffic, but it was actually flown generally on lighter cabin aircraft and shorter flights, because they were primarily within Europe. So the long-range market and the large cabin market was not doing so well. Small aircraft was the consensus last week, did fairly well. So when we look at the disruption that COVID has caused, I would like to ask you, how has it changed the way you worked? And I would like to start with you, Mark. What's been the biggest positive or the biggest negative for your line of work due to the whole new teleworking that we've been seeing in the last few months, year?
Thanks, Robert. So I will start with FBOs. So despite a huge drop of activities and where I was before a cutoff of 30% of the staff worldwide, the company implemented a teleworking, and implementing teleworking for FBO is not so easy, and you can apply it only to, I would say, department like finance, HR, and so on. But for frontline people, it's mainly impossible. So you can't support an aircraft from home. So that's it, it's done. I would say it was a more challenge for the teleworker also to stay home and work from home. The big issue there is that you change their habits and also you break the social connection at work. So this is, I would say, the disconnection was the biggest negative point. Teleworking is good because it helps you to think on another way of managing your company. And maybe all these people from finance, HR, and all the people who need to be directly online, it's maybe also an opportunity to review the way you work, reduce the number of office you have, and so on. So it's an opportunity for the next, I would say. Some country made this telework mandatory. So Switzerland was very was very picky on that. France did it, and other country came in after. But I think it's something we can keep, and it could be something good. But we have to be very careful for the, I will say, social connection there. So it's quite important also, and not all managers are, I would say, ready to manage from home. They are maybe good managing people in front of them, but managing from home in telework is something completely different. I will go also on the MRO side. MRO side is the same. You have workers that you cannot send home. So the mechanics, for example, they need to be on the aircraft. So telework for them, you can forget. But there is some other activities like commercial, MCC, HR, finance, quality and safety, that you can have from, you can work from home there. But you will need at least some duty on site, at least 1% of the team for the MCC or the QHS. Same as the FBO. There, the challenge is to manage this connection from the hangar and with the maintenance staff. I would say the telework is a good solution to keep and adjust in the next, but not for all the jobs. And there you need the implication of the manager. And I think management and top management need to think about this, but it should be done case by case.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, and I don't see MRO being done by telework. So yeah, that's absolutely spot on. And Francesco, you are in an office environment, in a regulatory environment, very international. What was the biggest positive and biggest negative for the agencies, being EASA, due to teleworking?
Yes, with regard to teleworking, we have initially mixed feelings. Let's say at the beginning, there was some change management to do, some infrastructure issues, but we were well suited to work, let's say, remotely due to our infrastructure and also the ability for everybody to have a laptop. And so we had some adjustment at the beginning. After 1 year of teleworking, I could say as a manager, we can carry on business as usual. When it comes to brainstorming about how to do things in a new way or develop new ideas and shaking the tree, steer discussions, this is quite a challenge. It is still doable, but you lack the human interaction. And being an Italian, I have also a strong emphasis on this. Okay, I miss the coffee talks where we do a lot of brainstorming as well. Back to you.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. I think it's I think introducing new people to the company, I think is extremely difficult. But as you rightly say, brainstorming, being creative, that bit and the social bit is extremely difficult through these means as well.
And Robert, I mean, needless to say that when we discuss about exercising the responsibilities for a certification and oversight, the fact that you are teleworking, you are just eliminating one side of the physical inspection and physical audit on site. And this is something that, of course, it can be only temporary. There will be no way that we can substitute a physical on-site audit or inspection via remote auditing. I mean, we could have webcams or drones doing this for us, but not in the near future, I guess. Back to you.
Yeah, we hear a lot of people when they now do pre-purchase inspections or other inspections on aircraft. Some of them are done remotely, but as you rightly say, it A, costs more time actually, and B, it's not as good as being on site. That's for sure. Iryna, from your side, if you look at, I think it's probably similar to what Mark was describing. How does it work for you guys?
For the teleworking?
Yeah.
Well, of course, at the airport, we are the people who must be on the ground because you cannot telework with an aircraft flying. So from this point of view, the positive point was that the group managed to organize the teleworking in an efficient way. So we had all the necessary tools to continue to communicate with our teams and to see each other on Zoom and Teams. Well, the operational teams, they were on the ground, they didn't telework, so they were there. And it may be the negative point that some of, let's say, administrative workers didn't meet operational teams so frequently like before. But well, it was mandatory in France. So for for the whole French network, we managed to work like this. And we continue because it's very encouraged.
Yeah. Now, the people who have been the most impacted, in my humble opinion, by the whole COVID situation are the people in operations. If you think about the workload that has gone through the roof, if you want to do one flight, I think it doubled the amount of hoops you need to go through and paperwork, etc., etc. So Simon, at NetJets, you already worked in a fully digital environment because your company, I'm aware of, is already between the US and Europe, but you had like two storms at the same time. You had to look at teleworking, but at the same time, even the number of flights might have gone down. I think the workload might have gone through the roof. Is that a good assessment?
Well, it's a very good assessment, Rob, and it's not double. We did analysis a few months ago, and it's almost 20 times email traffic goes back and forth just to one flight, because each state has its own rules. Sometimes the interpretation of the rules are different. You know, so the FBO might have an interpretation, the local authority. It's very challenging indeed. So it has, even though flight volume has gone down, the workload has not gone down at all whatsoever. Notwithstanding, I mean, there are some positives. I mean, as you mentioned, we have been working digital because we do have our main computer systems in the US. So we're used to that. And so it was actually very pleasing to see how quick the company was able to adapt to working from home. It was literally overnight. And everyone was setting up their laptops at home. And as Iryna's mentioned, Teams has been an amazing help. It's been software. It's been more challenging. Certain roles you cannot do it remotely, as been mentioned already, due to legal reasons sometimes, and certain meetings just are not as productive if they're done by Teams. So we have seen less effective in that sense. And there's also, as Francesco touched upon, there's the social impact. It's very important for all line managers to ensure their team is motivated. It's going to be natural that people are going to have ups and downs and feel less motivated, especially when there's peaks of the virus infections and the governments, as we have now in Portugal, a major lockdown and people have to stay home. You have to be very careful and very aware that how your team members are doing, and make sure you reserve time to spend time with them, and make sure that each individual member has reserved time for themselves to make sure they get up from the computer. Because of what we've been noticing is that people spend many more hours working because they don't have commute time, and they're just adapting their lives to this new reality. And then we have to be very careful, sensitive to those sort of factors.
Yeah, it's interesting. The EBAA, we were fortunate by coincidence. It was not planned as such, but our CFO had the idea for us to go into the cloud and get everything off the server, and that was finished like a month or two before COVID. And we are constantly thanking our, giving our praises to the fact that this happened, because it works much better. But if you have to plan a flight with all the different windows and all the different ticks in the boxes, it's already a difficult process, and yeah, I can imagine it's challenging. Now, more on the positive side, we learned at the previous Airops session that the recovery for business aviation can be swift. And if we go back, and there's two things there, and I see a question here from Zoe Leyden, who has anyone picked up on the UK roadmap, which includes travel restrictions lifting? Are there any impressions you might share? Too early to say. And I take the liberty to slightly amend your question there, Zoe, because what we hear in the UK now is because of this roadmap, people start to book flights like crazy because everybody wants to go on holiday. When we look at the trend on the slide I showed before, we saw August, when there was a window and people were allowed to fly and restrictions were going down, we saw more people traveling. So the question is, it's great, that we've adjusted, etc. Unfortunate that some organization had to lay off people, etc., etc. But the question is, are we ready for an upswing? And I think there's two people I would like to raise that question with. Mark, do you think our FBOs, etc., are resilient enough to quickly jump back and handle a lot of traffic, or have we brought everything back to the bare minimum?
I would say that business aviation demonstrated its agility and resilience. So my opinion is that business aviation will recover quickly, except if we face a major economic crisis, and that kills the impulse we have at the moment. We should stay realistic, and I'm convinced we can gear up ready.
Okay, thank you. And Simon, without giving any secrets away, I know NetJets has mentioned in the press that actually, from a sales perspective, it's been very good. It's been one of the best years you've ever had for new customers joining the programs. They haven't started flying yet. Now, if I put Zoe's question together with that indication that actually there's more people who have become a customer not starting using it, let's think positive. Are you ready for an upswing?
We are ready for it, and we're looking forward to it, to a certain degree, of course. I mean, we do think that when the corridors open again and there's a herd immunity, if that's August, September, there's going to be a big upswing of flight uptakes. So, we're doing very careful planning to ensure that we have crew members ready at the right time, maintenance of the aircraft, everything's ready and going through. But who knows how big it will be. So we are planning in a big way to try and to mitigate any impact that can happen to our operation.
So I can imagine that what you mentioned earlier, the flexibility on training and things like that, Francesco pointed to, that those things are really important because you need to put it in place now, but it will be really tough to do so.
In the past, we've always had the peak season in the summer, so it's been our habit since the get-go to always make sure that from May to September we have the most fleet and crew and training and everything's done in the winter low season to make sure we have that. Here it's just on steroids, really. So we are planning accordingly.
Okay, let's move a step back a little bit. Is when we look at the COVID measures so far. Iryna, from an airport perspective, how do you feel that? Was there sufficient information from the authority, or too much, or what's your perception on how it was dealt with?
Well, we received enough information from the authorities, actually in our in France, for example, but the information changed a lot. So the most difficult was to monitor all changes and to then implement them. So each airport created a steering committee for COVID and their mission was to follow up with all new directives, all new information about the authorities, and to implement them and to dispatch into each department. And also in our headquarters in Paris, we had also a good assistance from our teams because they centralized many information and helped us to be well, to be in a good situation for all the operations. But well, the difficulties were with the many changes from the border controls, from the authorization to travel, which country, its own rules, how to travel, and to communicate to our customers, which were operators, and they asked us what are the rules. So this was complicated, but well, we managed. And thanks, by the way, thanks to EBAA for the document you put on your website with all, you know, with all the restrictions in Europe. It was very useful.
Yeah, thank you for that, because actually I have to thank ACOC and yourself and other members for that as well. Is that for people who are not fully aware, EBAA, we are a representative body. So our main task is to talk to the authorities and talk on rules and regulations. And COVID-19 actually changed it for us a bit, because everybody came with operational questions that we were not geared up for. And we decided, well, if nobody's answering it, let's bring it together. Now, after 2-3 months, I think all the operators started to figure out where to get the latest information. And so, you know, it went back. But it was, for us, it was an interesting time as well, Iryna. So absolutely. Mark, from an FBO perspective, sufficient information or too much?
When I was in my position, I was in the storm of communication with multiple countries. So can you imagine that you have communication from the US, communication coming from Australia, communication coming from Europe, communication from all around the world. So a lot to do. So we had to organize the, I will say, the FBO networks on the way that we can have access to all this documentation, analyze them, take the action, and monitor everything. Nevertheless, it was not a piece of cake, but we made it. So we built a strong system to gather all this information and do this analyze and dispatch in real time to all the sites around the world. It was really a big challenge. The big challenge is to take care about what you receive from one country and another, because you had a lot of information that were conflicting, and taking the good decision was not always an easy thing. So, and from one hour to another, it changed. So it was really, we say, not the quantity of communication, but mostly the problem, the decision that changed from an hour to another. And really, even on ground, for example, a simple thing, can you imagine that in Switzerland, the distanciation was 2 meters, and next door in France, the distanciation was 1 meter. I do want the people to switch systematically to 2 meters when they cross the border. Just simple things like this. So imagine in an FBO, when you receive communication and I will say information from all around the world with different operators and things like this. It was really a big challenge.
And Simon, I mean, you already mentioned just now 20 times as much from an email perspective. How is it for you?
Well, there's two elements. There's the health and safety element, which obviously we've already gone through. Each government in each area changes rules constantly and trying to catch up, as Mark touched upon. But there's also the guidance we got from EASA, for example, was, in our opinion, was very much focused on commercial aviation, not business operators. In the sense that it's understandable why, but it was guidance material, it wasn't obligatory. And so we had to adapt to that guidance material to our own COVID response time, as you might call it, which I think is in version 5, if I'm not mistaken already. Because our local authorities was asking and requesting what we were doing from an operator to guarantee, right from flight booking to flight crew, cleaning, all the health risks associated to an operation, what we're doing to ensure that we were mitigating all the possibilities. We also ran into when we have overzealous airlines or border controls, where airlines were going one step further than what was required of them, and trying to position crew members across Europe. We did have some very challenging situations where clearly the guidelines and the local laws would allow it, but for some reason the airlines were going one step further. So that there's because airlines usually understand crew members just fly out to from their hub to do a fly and fly back. It's not as frequent having crew members flying as passengers, and so I think a lot of airlines don't understand that. That was a challenge we had in that sense. That business jets just have different dynamics to commercial airlines. We do hope that in the future that business jets is included in the guidelines from EASA, because we'll be very looking forward to work with them as EBAA does frequently.
Well, the reason I asked the three of you, and before I go to Francesco, is that EBAA is in the middle between this, and obviously it's our role to make sure that both parties understand one another. I think from this perspective, I would actually, Francesco, would like to compliment EASA on the work they did. This was extremely proactive, extremely quick, and to your point, Simon, I agree. Sometimes as a compromise because of the speed. Normally, regulations is a very slow process because everybody is constantly checking and cross-checking. Everybody has the ability to say something, but big compliment on this one to EASA because they were proactive. The downside of that is, yes, we were left out on those things, but seeing the work they've done and which is ongoing, and your points are spot on because that's what we relate as well. But Francesco, so from the business industry perspective, it seems sometimes a lack of coordination, at least between the member states and at a member state level. What were you able to do to try to level the playing field?
Thank you, Robert. Before I reply to your question, I think that everybody agrees that this crisis was the best advertisement for United States of Europe. Yeah. In terms of if you only think how aviation actually is integrated in Europe and is the true, say, a single market. If we had applied the same principles before the crisis to the health safety, we wouldn't be discussing this topic right now. So having this in mind, we took our, let's say, responsibility because we went beyond our remit. And for those of you that know regulations, you know that EASA does not have health safety in its remit. But we engaged because we also have a role in supporting the industry, and we understood that we have to think outside the box and exercise some courage, say. And so we engaged with the Commission, DG Santé, on the health issues, with the ECDC, to develop these guidelines and try to also harmonize travel restrictions. But you know that the appetite for sovereignty is something really hard to relinquish from the politicians of each state. So this was an issue that we faced. We exercise also influence towards ICAO to allow, you know, this the possibility to issue some papers and letters to the states, and we offer technical advice to the Commission representative in this Council Aviation Recovery Task Force that was set up by ICAO.
Yeah, it's interesting, Francesco, what you say. We need a more Europe in these kind of things, and specifically against the backdrop of Brexit, where a country says, "Oh, we need our sovereignty." It is actually the sovereignty of all the individual states who can make up their own rules on health and security is the other one. That really is killing our industry, because everybody, for the right reasons, I no doubt, trying to put rules on the table, but in the bigger picture, it doesn't always help. So we talked Brexit, we talked COVID. so we know those problems, but now let's start looking ahead a little bit, because assuming we get this Brexit thing sorted after all these things and the COVID, we would like to ask the audience in the next poll, what will be the next challenge in the next 10 years? Will it be airport access? So are we going back to slots? Will it be environment? Will it be this economic crisis we talked about, or is it too much regulation? So please feel free to answer this, and I'm very interested to learn what people are coming up with. So I would like to, just with one word, if you have to choose one of these four, I'm just going to go through the panel. Iryna, what would be the one you would say? Just the one word: access, environment, economic crisis, or regulation?
Environment.
Francesco?
Economic.
Yeah. Mark?
Environment.
And Simon?
I have to agree, environment.
Environment. Excellent. Okay. Well, maybe we can see the result. Well, there we go. 47% is on the environment. We're going to touch on that in a minute. Let's quick go through the list to the other points. And if we look at it, Iryna, when we talk access, so what do you see as the biggest challenge in the next 10 years for business aviation? Is there a big challenge for us or not?
Well, before COVID, I would say yes, because we already spoke about this issue in Europe, especially. We will not get new airports, but the air traffic is growing. Now with the current situation, let's wait and see how the traffic will recover and what would be maybe a new model. I don't know. Well, from our point of view, in some of our congested airports, when the airport has the possibility to regulate its traffic, usually we dedicate slots for the business aviation. For example, Chambéry, which is very known in wintertime, and it's very congested. So we, from many years, we decided to dedicate slots for the business aviation, and it works. Both aviation can operate. When we don't have the possibility to choose, because we have some airports like Lisbon, for example, where the coordinator decides. Well, it is complicated because we are on the ground and we don't decide for the slots. The business aviation can also use smaller airports, and it's very important for the aviation and for these airports, because it's better adapted for this kind of operations. So it's fluent, it's quick, it's confidential, everything you want. So I think it's important to not to be concentrated on a huge capital airport, and consider smaller airports which are available and which are better for the business aviation, I think.
No, I think you're spot on. I think secondary airports for convenience and you know, market access from a Biggin Hill, but even with Le Boucher as a big secondary airport, but also the very small airports are important for business aviation. What about potentially closure of some airports due to lack of traffic? You've got your ear better to the ground than we have. Are there airports in really dire straits at this stage that you know of? You don't have to mention names, but in general.
Well, in our network, we don't have this perspective. Even during the worst crisis, the COVID crisis, all the airports remained open. So for welcome, for example, medical flights, which are business aviation as well, government flights. So from our point of view, it's not something which can happen. So.
Okay, Simon. Coming from a time where we had customers requesting to fly to Heathrow, and we had to explain to people that A, you can't get in, B, you don't want to go there. So we built all these great alternatives, and now you can fly cargo, business jets, anything into Heathrow as long as it brings money. But where do you see the market going? Is it still the biggest issue, and how are you looking at it for the longer term?
I think there are several issues we need to keep an eye on. One of them is we don't see an issue with slots, obviously, because the flight volume is not going to return. Places like Heathrow, Frankfurt, Maine, you know, it's just not an issue currently. We do have concerns how the economic crisis might affect FBOs and airline connectivity, as I already mentioned earlier on. How that impact, and smaller airports obviously are more sensitive to economic downturns, and so we have to keep an eye on that. Although we are planning for the return of the flight volume, we have to keep an eye on how quick that flight volume comes back. It could hit us hard, and we have to make sure we're planned for that in that sense. Another item which involves the environment, which was chosen in the poll, but how is the regulation going to change according to the environment? So, you know, if EASA or the European bloc as a general becomes more and more restrictive in terms of environmental policies, how's the regulation going to adapt to that? And so we have to be very careful that regulation is adapted to our business model. On the backside of COVID, how long will we require COVID passport if that is the future? How long will airports supplement their income by insisting people have tests at airports? You know, that's a concern to us. How long will that last for? Is it going to be a psychological perspective, or is it scientific? You know, we need to keep an eye on that sort of those other elements for sure.
Okay, you jumped ahead to a question we had from Terry Spruce on COVID passport or vaccine passports. So, and his question was the position of the EBAA on vaccine passports. Terry, anything that makes travel work, we support. And the most important thing, and this comes back to the previous discussion, we want a level playing field. So what we would love to see is, we're a great supporter and proponent of the EASA ACDC document. And if that also would include some kind of vaccine passport, which is usable throughout Europe, the same rules, the same things, so that people like Simon and any other operator, when they send their crew to Helsinki or to Madrid, they know that the person will be accepted in that country. That is what we support. So far, there's been a lot of good regional initiatives or national initiatives. We are following the EASA COVID vaccine passport, which is ongoing, because we feel that if EASA, which has a lot of clout globally, and yes, it's the commercial airline side, but for us, in that case, it doesn't matter, as long as we get one standard. If you heard me speak at other places before, I always make the same joke. We don't care if the requirement is that all our pilots need to wear a purple hat. That's fine. We'll make sure they wear a purple hat, but let's make sure they wear a purple hat in every single country. The problem we have now is that one country says a purple hat, the other one says no hat, and the other one says two hats. And that's what we need to get away from. So I'm going to skip the economic crisis a little bit, because I saw that the majority of the audience was talking about regulation and environment. So Francesco, let's talk a little bit about regulation there, and if we can see the slide that goes with it. What are the main changes that have taken place, and what are the plans from EASA on regulation?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. I know that you prepared the slides that I will go through. There is also an element of environment in our, let's say, strategic plan for the next 4 years. We have an environmental roadmap that we are going to devise, publish, and follow. But I would like to just maybe stick to the ones that we are close to the operation side. Okay, since these are maybe more interesting for you. On one important aspect that I would like to highlight is the FTL for air taxi operations. Okay, this is something that has been put in the back burner for quite some time, and now it is being readdressed, and we had developed an MPA on 2017, and now we envisage to restart the work and have hopefully to have a framework, a CSFTL for this kind of operations in 2023. As you know, otherwise these are under national rules, and we go again on the story about 1 head, 2 heads, and 3 heads. In general terms, whatever you're seeing there, especially when you see RMT, okay, 0493, these are numbers that are taken from the European Plan for Aviation Safety. And this is the document by which EASA communicates to the stakeholders its strategic tasks, I say. And together with each safety issue that we identify, we have several actions, one of which is a rulemaking task, but there are also safety promotion or other standardization focus items and member state tasks for the oversight of the NAAs. So I invite everybody to take a look at this, and because this is also developed in coordination with the stakeholders, advisory groups, one of which is representing the industry and EBAA as well. So I provided the link to Robert. He will make this available to you, and the current edition is 2021-2025. So if you can step back to the previous slide, just after the FTL, there is another important task that is about to land, is the all-weather operation. Okay, this is a very important topic for business aviation because we try to connect the technology available into business jet aviation with the also infrastructure, with the aerodromes not fitted with ILSs or instrument runways. And we try to take stock of the recent developments and to give a more modern regulatory framework for the use of enhanced vision system and that are frequently used by business aviation. Okay, so this should please you. On another topic that is already available, this one is CAT-POL A255 in the Airops regulation, which allows the use of shorter runways. Okay. And we mentioned before that business aviation is basically claiming to bring the customer wherever he wants, okay? He or she wants. So that means that we need to have also a shorter runway, and this allows a reduced safety margin, but with an approval from the authority, and this based on a safety management system output that the operator needs to put in place. We are moving again towards more performance-based regulation. This flexibility entails that the operator needs to use it wisely and to use the safety management system the way it was supposed to be designed. Okay, there was designed, I say. So the last topic, and you can put the slides, is about ground handling, and this ground handling roadmap was put on hold due to COVID, and now it has been resurrected, and we have the first deliverables, which is a notice for proposed amendment to 2022, with the final deliverables in 2024 and 25. As you know, this is basically regulated by the industry as you speak, so rest assured that we're not going to reinvent the wheel. Okay, back to you, Robert.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Francesco. And I think for the audience, well, what you need to be aware of is that it's not somebody at EASA in a corner office just writing something up. This is something where the team of EBAA, with the help of EBAA members and specialists in specific areas, like people from ACOG, etc., are invited to participate at the NPA or different stages to help. So on the FTL, etc., etc. So it's a group process, and we absolutely would love you to participate as much as you can through us, and then we have a common position which we then use in our discussions with EASA. So yeah, FTL, we're going to do some research on top of that. That is doing well. The all-weather is great, and the reduced runway that will allow operators to operate at with a different margin if they meet certain criteria. So it's very useful for the industry. You can find in the chat the link to APAS. APAS is our Bible. because it clearly helps to see what the priorities are for EASA and how we link into it. So if you don't see it there, if you type in Echo, Papa, Alpha, Sierra and EASA in Google, you'll end up there as well. A very useful document. So make sure you go there. Now, Mark, do you think the industry is aware of what's coming from a regulation perspective, and are we ready?
I would say that maybe not all the GSSP industry is aware of what's coming on. The one who has been, I would say, already involved in it, maybe. We should not forget that ground handling has never been really regulated. So, and on some way, everybody, and I would say all the companies, all the GSSP, they are more focused on EBIT and margin than on ESMS. So this, they should think about it. I would say that business aviation has an advantage because a lot of operators are EBAA. And EBAA requests from the operator to have a control of their subcontractors. So this is a leverage for the FBO to go for a standard. Actually, there is the EBAA standard existing for business aviation. And I will say the one who are already EBAA certified, they know what's coming in the pipe. The one who are not, they don't. And they may have big surprise there. Because going to an SMS and having all what's needed around, it's not something easy and it takes time. On the other side also, if you look to the commercial, the big birds and so on, the one who are EASA, they have the system in place. But there, I will say, we will have something in front of us, which is a paradox. Getting high safety and high quality of service for cheap does not work. Okay, somewhere I'm not sure that all the industry is ready to invest in a mandatory system if there is no return on investment. Already on ground handling, prices are very low. Again, the operators, they look for cheap and quick. Then the mind also of the operator, I'm not speaking only about, I'm not focusing on business aviation, I'm taking the whole aviation world, okay? I would say that their effort will have to be made everywhere. And also on the operator to understand that if they want to have high level of safety, high level of quality in service from ground handling, the price will not stay the same. So they have to think about it. So again, going for this new regulation, it will take time. It will need training. It will need to change the structure of the company. It will need to change the mindset and management of chain, and all this will have a cost. So say that everybody is ready, not sure. The one who already started with EBAA, I would say yes.
Well, Mark, I think it's excellent because you basically gave a pitch for people to attend next week's meeting, which is on SMS for ground handling, and EBAA will also be discussed there. So I fully subscribe to what you're saying, and let's make sure that the industry does the same thing and is ahead of the game and really proactive. We've got only 10 minutes left, and we still have one of the area which was the most important, environment. I'll just shorten it slightly. What I can tell you is that environment will be the next big thing. We had COVID and Brexit, which is there and we have to deal with. One of the things which went through is the Green Deal. So at the European Commission, but also on a national level, you see that people are starting to ask questions about aviation in general and business aviation in specific. Now, EBAA, through several activities, is already engaged and making sure and working hard to make business aviation, make people aware of what we do to mitigate pollution and things that go with business aviation. Simon, I saw something exciting in the news about biofuels, and we will have a session in about 2 weeks. No, I'll come back with a date later on SAF, but you guys at NetJets also did something. So what are you doing on biofuels at the moment?
Yes, so carbon offsetting is one thing, but really we need to invest in the future. And so we are investing in biofuels. We've committed to purchase, I think it's 100 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel over the next decade to further, sustain our efforts. We've also partnered with a company called Waste Fuel and Prime Infra to establish biorefineries in Manila, Philippines, and the idea is investment for a few additional facilities in the future. So that's the first phase we're going through.
Okay, so biofuels and sustainable alternative fuels is the same thing there. Just okay. Okay, and is that customer-led or is that company-led? Is there any what's behind it?
I think, to be honest, it's society-led, isn't it? I mean, as a society, we're getting more and more aware of it, and it's sign of the times. We have to adapt.
Okay. Talk about environmental measures. Good morning. Iryna, are you investing in specific infrastructure or sustainable alternative fuels to be uplifted at your airports? Is that something you're looking at?
Well, in VINCI Airport, we started our environmental program 5 years ago now in order to reduce our CO2 emissions at the airport. And by now, we reduced by 35% our impact in the airport. So it's not really, well, we are working with partners for the biofuel and hydrogen into aviation. So we are not alone on this, but we are working with our partners to put something in place in our airports, of course. Because if operators want to use it, it needs to be available at the airport, of course.
Yeah, no, and the reason I'm asking it as well is I think Andrea Sbrasia asked, okay, will the fact that we are polluting, and we are, put a brake on the growth of business aviation? So I think there needs to be investment in there. And you can also reverse it. Mark, do you think there will be a competitive advantage if you can offer something like this?
I would say yes. In fact, we did it. I will go for the SAF. In fact, in the company I was before, we have been providing SAF on some airport. It's a real advantage, I would say, business-wise, but you have to make sure that the operator, your customer, are aware that you can provide the SAF, and you should advert it, of course. And you should have it available on the airport. So again, it's a whole chain. It's exactly as we were speaking about environment. If you decide to put something in place, but at the moment the chain is not complete, or you cannot go to your target because something is missing in the system, and you don't handle the whole system, it will not work. So sure, but it's an advantage, sure.
Okay. Environment by its nature is a topic in itself. The EBAA is working with all the large OEMs, Bombardier, Gulfstreams and the like, but also with the fuel companies and other associations in the Sustainable Alternative Fuels Alliance. At the end of the show, I can put it up now if you want, Justine, that people can see what is happening. This is a very important session to go to, and I wouldn't give it the attention it needs if we just do it on the side. So if you make a note of this, of what you can do with SAF, what you can't do with it, and why it's one of the few short-term abilities we have to bring the carbon offset or the issues with carbon under control, please do attend this session as well. I have one more question, just slightly jumping back to ISBA. This is from Stanley Bogea. This is for you, Francesco. Are you aware of the ISBA standard, and do you anticipate there will be credit given at some point by EASA if an FBO is ISBA certified?
Okay.
You might have to pass it to somebody else.
This is maybe too early to say in terms of, I mean, formal commitment, but I can assure you that since we recognize industry standards in the risk-based oversight system for air operators, I think that we will apply the same concept. More so in the ground handling because it's been regulated, if we allow me the term, by the industry. Through their own standards, and so I would say that EBAA will be a strong candidate to become a recognized system. Of course, we don't give the label from EASA, no. Although we have done our assessment of the EASA program and also the EBAA program, okay, to also share our findings, say our impression on the systems, together with the authorities that are supposed to factor this in their oversight. And risk-based oversight is the mantra here, that we spend the few resources that the authorities have on the areas of major risks. So ideally, if you have if you comply with industry standards, you should be able to demonstrate and be credited for some sort of compliance culture, I say. So we are dealing with this also together with industry, and in the EBAA we've been dealing with this EBAA, and one of my team members has been monitoring the EBAA program and witnessing some audits. So we probably would do the same with the ground handling side.
Perfect. Well, that is reassuring to hear, because EBAA being a standard by industry for industry, and it's a non-profit standard, we feel it's very appropriate that we don't have a standard which is meant for the commercial airlines. And a little bit echoing that what Simon was saying earlier, that some of the rules, or sometimes things are written for commercial aviation for the right reasons. They're known, and it's a large industry, but it's generally not adaptive to what we do. So good to hear that, and like I said, next week SMS for ground handling, excellent session if you would like to know that for an FBO, etc. So please do look at that. With that, I would like to fire a quick question to all four panelists in succession. The current outlook, is it a challenge or an opportunity? Iryna, challenge or opportunity?
Opportunity.
Excellent. Mark?
Opportunity.
Simon?
Opportunity for sure.
And Francesco?
Opportunity as well.
That sounds like a class full, so that's very positive. And on that positive note, I would like to end the presentation. If we haven't answered your question, we'll try to get back to you directly and answer them afterwards. Thank you very much. You can also email us the questions. Look on the website for the links to EASA on Brexit, also on the operational things around Brexit, on COVID, anything else, anything problems you encounter where you find it's a big thing, like we had an issue with Turkey in the last few days. Please let us know as well, and that's what we're here for. So on that note, I would like to end this excellent panel. Based on the comments, questions, I hope you found it very useful, and we found it, at least it was. I'm very happy on the positive note to leave it. I would again thank our sponsor Skylink, which is the prime handling agent in Cyprus that made this session possible. Skylink is also EBAA approved, so you know that your aircraft crew and passengers are in capable hands. So keep that in mind. I would like to pitch again for the SMS next week. The week after, we have Eurocontrol on most efficient planning. So that is one. And last but not least, may I draw your attention to the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Summit that will be hosting on the 20th of April. With that, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon and safe landings. Bye-bye.
Thank you.